Good evening, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining. And we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. Now, electioneering is in full gear in Jamaica, and I can see that our politicians, both incumbent government and the leader of the opposition, Mark Golding, are on the campaign trail and they're having fun, right? They're dancing and having a good time, a ball, as it were, with their constituents and their fans, right? Because what we have in Jamaica, it's just party all the time. So you have your fans and you go on the political campaign and you laugh and you dance and you drink and you have good music and you see the Darrell Vazes and the Mark Goldings, right? And all these politicians dancing and the people are having fun with them, not understanding that we are living in very serious times. When are we going to grow up and understand that our politicians, Jamaican politicians particularly, are not interested in developing the nation and that they're actually working along with the local and global elites to inflict pain upon the population? And we've got to understand that. I think that we're still in a frenzy, as it were, and we're still delusional, thinking that our politicians are working in the interest of the majority. They're working in the interest of the minority, right? And that's what you have to understand, not in the interest of the majority. And that is how we were grown up. And for many years, I thought so too, until I found that in my late 20s that that was not the case, right? That our politicians are not working in the best interest of its citizens, of their citizens. And we've got to really come to grips with that sad and unfortunate reality. Now, I'm going to look briefly this evening at Mark Golding. Now, Mark Golding, we've been talking a lot about him in terms of his dual citizenship. Of course, as I said, I don't think that according to the laws that Mark Golding is breaking any laws in Jamaica where the Constitution is concerned. And I have already intimated on many occasions on this platform, and let me reiterate that again, that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And therefore, we cannot countervail and we cannot argue with it until we change it, right? The only way we can argue with the Constitution is if we change it. So we need to change or amend the Constitution so that if the majority of people are not comfortable with dual citizens in their parliament, then we should change it. According to, I'm listening to a poll that was done by, I forgot the name of that poll investigator, but I understand that 64% of Jamaicans, that's 6.4 out of every 10 Jamaicans, are unhappy with Mark Golding's dual citizenship. And I'm not sure why they targeted Mark Golding, because there are other parliamentarians in the parliament who also have dual citizenship. So why should you just target Mark Golding? But everything in Jamaica is tribalistic, right? And is partisan. So therefore, that should not surprise us as far as Mark Golding's being targeted is concerned. Now, who is Mark Golding? One of the things that is important for us to understand in Jamaica over the years, we have not really written anything about our politicians. Our politicians often run in obscurity. We do not know who these people are. We just accept the superficial, understandings of them based on what has been released from the media. But you must understand that Jamaican media also is controlled by corporations and the Jamaican elites, and they just reveal or they have unmasked, a portion, just a minute portion of who these characters are. And, I read rather yesterday in the Gleaner, an article written by Dr. Over Taylor, and he was suggesting that Jamaica's democracy is healthy, right? That is a sort of delusional thinking that we have in Jamaica, because how can he, from the perch that he's sitting on top of, suggests that Jamaica's democracy is healthy, and even went as far as saying that it's perhaps healthier than our neighbors to the north, right? Referring to North America, the United States of America. And I'm wondering what has hit Dr. Orville Taylor on his head to even suggest that, because quite frankly, we don't even know our history. Most Jamaicans do not even know their history. They don't understand the political system. They do not understand the Constitution and how it works. And they do not understand that we are, in fact, a monarchy, right? Which we are a constitutional monarchy. And the more we think about that we are a constitutional monarchy, it's the more that it should help us to understand that what we have is a big plantation. And don't think it's just a problem of the Queen and the Queen is now dead, the King, right? King Charles III. Because our politicians and our financial elites, and to a lesser extent, or educational academic elites, are also a part of that nobility class. And the citizens of Jamaica are subjects of this royalty, of this monarchical system of governance in Jamaica. Now, Mark Golding, I am going to open up with him and talk a little about him. And let's go, sometimes here we have on this website, Hart Merhead Fatah, as he's attorney at law. And, Mark Golding seemed to have worked at this company. But before we go to that company, let's go to what is given on the Ottawa side. That's the High Commission in Canada, right? Because Ottawa is the capital of Canada. So let me see if I can share my screen with you, and we can read some things about Mark Golding as he has described himself. Remember now that we're not writing books, and we should be writing books. We should have a prime ministerial library, right? We can't afford to have, different prime ministers have their individual libraries as we have in the United States. But the University of the West Indies could have housed a house there in which you have different floors. Let us, you have different floors and different books and journal articles, books primarily that talk about our prime ministers, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. What we have over the years, we have had our prime ministers who have, after having demitted office in recent times, they have written books. So we had Michael Manley, and you have Prime Minister P.J. Patterson. Golding, you have Mr. Sierra, but Golding has not yet written his biography or his autobiography, but they have written books in which they have praised themselves, and we do not have a dispassionate account of their stewardship whilst in office, and that is a problem. I think we need to discuss that, and I think the academics at the University of the West Indies could have done something like that. Those who are studying political science and history should join hands and heart together, and their minds, their intellects, to pen books about our prime ministers. And we should be able to read books even before we actually vote for them. But the fact of the matter is that that's not the culture. But that is what democracy is about in Jamaica, right? Democracy is about obscurity, darkness, having no intellect, and all we do is a dance and party, and then we bring up the intellectuals, the pseudo-intellectuals in Jamaica bring up, controversial topics, and then they distract us for weeks upon weeks, and then the substantive matters are not discussed, right? This is what the experience that many people actually have to go through in Jamaica, have to endure. Now, we have here Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Mark Golding, is an attorney at law, specializing in the areas of corporate finance, capital markets, and mergers and acquisitions. And this caught my attention, mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions, what? He has been lead counsel in many public and private sector issues of domestic and international debt and equity securities. So not only domestic, but international debt and equity securities, and in several large corporate mergers and acquisitions. right? Now, how do we know if these mergers are actually in the interest of Jamaica? And what companies, what international companies has he worked for? And what companies or companies has he merged? And were those mergers in the best interest of the Jamaica's economy? Where are our journalists? They should be unearthing these things. I'm not suggesting here that he might have done anything bad or anything illegal, anything illicit. My thing is that we are talking about dual citizenship. We should be engaging in these topics to see who really is markgolding and what organizations is he affiliated with. But that is not what Jamaica does, right? We look at little petty matters, and that is what we are going to, discuss and ad nauseum until the elections. And then again, we have markgolding or anti-wholeness come to power, and they do the same thing, right? Nothing changes. It's going to be business as usual. In 2011, he took a leave of absence from Hart Merhead Fatal, the firm of which he has been a partner since 1993, to assume his appointment as Minister of Justice. Now, that is interesting, right? Mr. Golding studied law at Oxford University, where he graduated with first-class honors. Congratulations to him. Wishing to return home to practice, he attended the Norman Manley Law School in order to be called to the Jamaican bar and received its prize for the most outstanding student of the class in 1978 to 1989. He then won a Commonwealth scholarship and continued his studies at the University of London, obtaining a master's degree in commercial and corporate law, right? So he is, in fact, a studious person, isn't he? In 1993, the opportunity arose for him to join the two young Jamaican investment bankers to form Jamaica's first investment bank, Daring Bronte and Golding Limited, that is the DBNG. The business flourished to become a leading and innovative part of Jamaica's financial landscape. In 2006, DBNG was acquired by Scotia Group. In January 2010, he joined with some of his former DBNG colleagues to form Proven Investments Limited, an investment company which is listed on the Jamaican stock market. Now, one of the things I recognize is that the company DBNG was actually sold, right, to the Scotia Group in 2006. And then Mr. Golding, in 2007, he joined the PNP as a senator. He was called to become a senator. And that was interesting, wasn't it? Because I think that it was in 2006 that was the end of the FINSAC saga and the whole readjustment and the whatever they did, in buying off companies and the mergers of companies and so forth and so on. And we learned here that Mr. Golding, one of his skills is the fact that he has the dexterity to merge, right, security building companies, right, and to, make them one, if as it were. Mr. Golding served on the task force which performed the developmental work leading to the creation of the Financial Services Commission as Jamaica's regulator for the securities, insurance, and trusts, mutual funds, and pensions industries. He also represented the private sector organization of Jamaica on the Material and Tax Reform Committee and before the Joint Select Committee considering Companies Bill 2004. Right, so here he has really an impressive resume. Mr. Golding has been a director of several leading companies, including Grace Kennedy, the Bank of Nova Scotia, Jamaica, Kingston Wharves, and Carrick Chris, the Caribbean region's first credit rating agency. He is the chairman of the Mona Rehabilitation Foundation, founded by his late father, Professor Sir John Golding, and was formerly a director of Food for the Poor of Jamaica. That's what I thought was interesting, that he was the director of the food for the poor, right? Isn't that the organization or the company that is led out by the Catholic Chinese Jamaican, Father Hola? Now, he was appointed to Jamaica's Senate by the leader of the opposition in September 2007. He served as opposition spokesman or spokesperson on industry and commerce until 2011, and then as Shadow Minister for Justice until being appointed Minister of Justice in January 2012. Mr. Golding was first elected Member of Parliament for South St. Andrew in 2017. In November 2020, he was elected as President of the People's National Party and became leader of the opposition. That's interesting because I understand that in 2017, according to what I've read, he was not necessarily interested in becoming, a member of parliament, as it were, right? But he was actually persuaded, right, by the likes of Dr. Carolyn Cooper, other members, right, like Dr. Omar Davis, to become a member of parliament, right, for the same, it is constituency. What is it called again? I forgot the name. The South St. Andrew, right? So that's he became member of parliament for South St. Andrew in 2017. And I think that was a constituency that Dr. Omar Davis had during his tenure as member of parliament, right? In the People's National Party. Now, I've been asking the question, and I've been thinking, was markgolding sent by the likes of Dr. Omar Davis and other members of the private sector organization of Jamaican elites, to protect the wealth, to protect their wealth? Because markgolding, let's not really be delusional, right? Markgolding is a de facto member of the Jamaican elites, right? Remember now that everything about him is elite-based, right? Is elite, right? He has that sort of elitist foundation. I'm not suggesting now that he cannot become a good prime minister. He might be, but the thing about it, as I've said before, we do not know a lot about markgolding. All we know about him is what we see on these websites, and this is not sufficient information. The information we're getting is not sufficient for us to build a case in terms of whether markgolding is going to be just the average prime minister that we've had over the years, right? Because our prime ministers have not distinguished themselves as men or women. We just had one woman since our history started, right? They have not distinguished themselves as people who really mean Jamaica well. They have not done that yet, right? We have not seen that. So we need to understand that. Now, there is also on the Heart Muirhead FATA, that's the website, that's the distinguished or website, Jamaican law firm, that is in Jamaica. I don't know who these people are, the Muirhead and the FATA. Who are these people, right? And are those Jamaican surnames, Muirhead and FATA, or are they international? Who own this company? We need to have a more in-depth analysis and investigative, what should I say now, undertaking where this is concerned. But let us look at that company and see what they're saying about Marquis British, as they're calling him in Jamaica. All right, so we see here Heart Muirhead FATA, right? What on God's earth is that? FATA. Now, Honorable Mark G. Golding, MP, admitted to practice in Jamaica in 1990, was educated at Magdalen College, Oxford University, and University College, London, England. Mark practiced as an associate at another prominent Jamaican firm until he joined HMF in 1993. Now, what was the other prominent Jamaican firm that he practiced for? I don't know. Mark has developed a strong commercial practice in the areas of mergers and acquisitions. Mergers of businesses, capital markets, banking, securities, and other financial services, taxation, and property. He was a founding director of both Daring Bunting and Golding Limited, now Scotia Investments Jamaica Limited, and Proven Wealth Management Limited. Mark has held directorships on numerous other local and regional boards, including Caribbean Information and Credit Rating Services and the first regional ratings agency for the Caribbean, Grace Kennedy Limited, Bank of Nova Scotia, Jamaica Limited. So he has really distinguished himself as a careerist politician, right? And someone who has straddled, as it were, many positions in both the financial world and also in the legal world. He has served as the representative of the private sector organization of Jamaica before the Joint Select Committee in the Houses of Parliament and the Select Committee of the Jamaican Senate in considering a new Companies Act for Jamaica. He was appointed by the Minister of Finance and Planning to serve as a member of the task force to establish the Financial Services Commission, the regulator of non-deposit taking financial services institutions. He has also served on the Bank of Jamaica's task force, which reviewed the legislation governing the operations of Jamaica's central bank, the Bank of Jamaica. So Mark is also a distinguished public servant. He was a member of the Jamaican Senate from 2007 and served with distinction and excellence as a Minister of Justice for Jamaica between January 2012 to March 2016. He has been the Member of Parliament for South St. Andrews since 2017. In November 2020, he was elected President of the People's National Party and became the leader of the opposition. Right, he remains one of the leading commercial lawyers in Jamaica by both chambers, Global and IFLR. Right? I mean, I wonder if he has given up those positions, and is there any conflict of interest? These are some of the things that we have to be asking ourselves, and we just don't know. We really don't know who really is markgolding, as we can see, who is Andrew Holness, who is Brogan, really, right? Because we have very superficial, as it were, information on these characters. Now, I read something from the cable from the United States that was sent, I think this could have been in 2011, right? You know that the United States it was published by WikiLeaks. And these are cables, private cables that the embassy, the US Embassy in Kingston sends back to the State Department there in the United States. Now, let's look at what they had to say about markgolding and bunting, right? What is he called again? Is it Bunting? I forgot his first name. Right? How could I forget? Bunting, Peter Bunting, actually, his name is Peter Bunting. All right, let's get to what this cable has to say about these two characters who were once partners in Daring Bunting and, is it Daring Bunting and Golding? Yeah, Daring Bunting and Golding, yeah, DBNG. Now, we see here the increased prominence of Peter Bunting. This is now the US cable published on WikiLeaks, and markgolding in key party roles as General Secretary and Treasurer, respectively, is noteworthy. Bunting and Golding, no relation to the current PM, because the current PM would have been then Prime Minister Bruce Golding, suggests the emergence of a younger, so this would have been published probably in 2009, because Mr. Golding demitted the office in 2010, suggests the emergence of a younger, more pragmatic generation of young Turks within the PNP leadership. As a PNP advisor in the early 1990s, Bunting was instrumental in convincing PM Michael Manley, the passionate socialist of the 1970s, to pursue economic liberalization in the 1990s. So Peter Bunting was instrumental in persuading Prime Minister or former Prime Minister Michael Manley to pursue economic liberalization in the 1990s. And that's exactly what brought about FINSAC, right? It was this policy, and I would say suicidal policy, that led to the FINSAC debacle, right? You need to understand that. Had this not occurred. Now, we don't know if Mr. Siaga, that's Mr. Edward Seco, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, was speaking the truth, but he did say that he chided Manley and he tried to convince him that the economic liberalization was not good for Jamaica. But it seemed to me that Peter Bunting knew what he was doing along with Mark Golding, because see that Mark Golding was a part of this team. Later, Bunting and Golding became wealthy, right? They became wealthy because they were able to merge. Remember now, that was what we saw during the FINSAC era, this merging of different companies, right? And this is what was Mr. Golding's, as it were, forte. This was the training that he received as a commercial lawyer, right? He's a corporate lawyer. Bunting and Golding became wealthiest partners in the corporate finance and the brokerage firm of Darren Bunting and Golding before re-entering, in Bunting's case, politics in 2007. So what they did, they made sure that they had their footing in the world of finance, that is Peter Bunting and Mark Golding. So they had their firm footing, as it were, in the financial world. And they were movers and shakers in terms of the policies, the suicidal policies that brought the Jamaica's economy to its knees, right? And then afterwards, they entered politics. And you know why they're there? Because they want to protect their power, right? Because when you think about politics, it's a symbol of power, right? So when they're there, they can protect the power structure and perhaps obfuscate, hide, conceal things that should be revealed to the Jamaican populace. Because, as far as I'm concerned, and I hope that Jamaicans understand what I'm saying, FINSAC happened in around about 1995, was it thereabout? I think it ended perhaps in 2006 when they sold their company to the Nova Scotia Limited. Now, what's interesting is that I think that FINSAC 2 came about again in 2013, I should say, during the IMF, the new IMF deal. Because remember now that, Prime Minister P.J. Patterson bid the IMF Tata in 1995. And then we went back to the IMF around about 2009, thereabout. We went back to the IMF. We had, under Mr. Bruce Golding, a very conflictual relationship with the IMF. And then as a result of that, there was a stalemate between the IMF and Jamaica. And we actually re-engaged the IMF around about 2013, and we got a very austere deal with them. And I think that that was FINSAC Part 2. And that is going to, if not, has led to the complete devastation of the Jamaican financial infrastructure. I do not think all the policies that you believe that you see, what's his name, the learned and the scholarly, the Minister of Finance, was it what, Nigel Clark? All of these policies that he's actually pursuing are not going to enrich the Jamaican society. We are going to see eventually that those policies are impoverishing us, and that indeed they're actually betraying the trust of the Jamaican people. And I think this saga at SSL was just the beginning of sorrows, right? It was just the beginning of sorrows, right? And we've got to really come to grips with these realities, right? So Peter Bunting and Mark Golding, that's Mark Golding, who is now the de facto oppositional leader of the People's National Party, have gone into politics, right? And are wielding power over the Jamaican political and economic landscape. But it was interesting that it was Peter Golding, not Peter Golding, but Peter Bunting, right? Peter Bunting, who actually convinced the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Michael Manley, to open up our economy, to go the economic liberalization path, which was a suicidal path that led to the FINSAC debacle, right? And no wonder we're not going to hear anything about it. So when they're talking about dual citizenship, it's really applauded by both, members, both side of the political discourse, right? They're winning because they're all well, I shouldn't say they're all, but both sides have benefited from the FINSAC disaster, right? Both sides have benefited. As a result of that, whatever revelations that might be revealed will not be damning to any of these major characters. When I say characters, I mean political characters and actors. So it's time for us to wake up and to see that these politicians are not there to solve the problems of Jamaica. And we've got to do our own research, right? We've got to do our own research because at the end of the day, we are the ones who are going to find ourselves in hot water, right? And as many say, even if they do not have dual citizenship, they can get their citizenship in another country if they want to, because they have enough money, right? They have amassed enough money that if they want to go to any country, right, to live, they can live. Dual citizenship or single citizenship, they are able to do so. So stop talking about dual citizenship and begin now to ask hard questions, pose hard questions to markgolding. What sort of role did you play in the FINSAC debacle? And also, what role did markgolding play during FINSAC Part 2? Those are my words on FINSAC Part 2, because I think that was FINSAC Part 2, because he was involved in the austere negotiations with the IMF that was imposed upon Jamaica in 2013. So markgolding is wielding or has wielded a lot of financial power over the Jamaican economy. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you will join me in another video when I shall upload. Please be sure to like, to share, and subscribe. See you then. All the best.